Hey everyone, so you're thinking about the iPhone 14 Pro in 2025. Maybe you're looking to buy one, maybe you already have one, and are wondering if you should upgrade, or maybe you're just curious if it still holds up. Well, you've come to the right place. In this video, I'm gonna share my honest thoughts on this phone after using it for a while. We'll cover everything from the design and display to the performance, battery life, camera, and even the software situation with iOS 18.6 and Apple Intelligence. So stick around and let's find out together if the iPhone 14 Pro is still worth it. You know, it's funny to think back to when this phone was first released. The big new thing was the dynamic island. It was and still is a really cool feature. It felt like a fresh take on the notch, and it was a pretty big deal at the time. Apple also introduced the 48 megapixel main camera sensor, which was a huge leap for the iPhone, and of course the A16 Bionic chip, which was a powerhouse then, and as we'll see, still is. So let's dive in and see how all of that holds up today. Alright, so let's talk about the design and display. I have the gold color, and I've gotta say I still love the way this phone looks and feels. It has that premium stainless steel frame that just feels solid in your hand. You know, it's got that nice weight to it, and the flat edges, well, they're still here and they're still flat. Some people love them, some people don't. For me, it's a classic look. Now the display, it's a 6.1-inch Super Retina XDR display with ProMotion, and honestly, it's still fantastic. This was actually the first iPhone to introduce the always-on display, and the reason it works so well is because the ProMotion display can go all the way down to a super efficient 1 Hz refresh rate. It's a nice feature to have for, just glancing at the time or your widgets. But the biggest upgrade, and something that keeps this phone so relevant, is the brightness. This screen can get up to 2000 nits peak brightness when you're outdoors. And you know what's crazy? Apple is still using the same brightness specs on the iPhone 15 Pro and the latest 16 Pro. So the display on this phone is literally just as bright as the brand new models, which is pretty amazing. In my day-to-day use, whether I'm scrolling through social media or watching videos, it's just a joy to look at. And as you can see, the dynamic island is right there at the top. It's not just for looks, it's actually pretty useful for things like timers, music, and live activities. It's one of those things that once you get used to it, you kind of miss it on other phones. Okay, let's get into the performance. This is where things get interesting. The iPhone 14 Pro is rocking the A16 Bionic chip, and let me tell you, this chip is no slouch. Even in 2025, it's still incredibly fast. See, in my day-to-day, I don't notice any lag or stuttering. Apps open instantly, multitasking is a breeze, and even graphically intensive games run smoothly. For those of you who like the numbers, I did run a Geekbench 6 test and the results are pretty impressive. I got a single core score of 2637 and a multi-core score of 6762. So yeah, on raw performance, this phone can still hang with the best of them. It's running the latest iOS 18.6 and honestly, it handles it without breaking a sweat. Now, let's talk about something that's on everyone's mind when it comes to an older phone: battery life. So my battery health is currently at 85%. And I'm not gonna lie, it's not what it used to be, but, and this is a big but, it still gets me through a full day of my typical usage. You know, some social media, checking emails, listening to music, and maybe a little bit of YouTube. See, when I'm out and about, I might need to top it up in the late afternoon if I'm using it heavily, but for the most part, it's manageable. If you're a heavy user, you might want to consider getting the battery replaced, but for most people, I think 85% is still pretty usable. Alright, let's talk about the camera. This is one of the main reasons why people buy iPhones, right? And the iPhone 14 Pro's camera system is, in my opinion, still fantastic. That 48 megapixel main sensor is the star of the show. The level of detail you can get from the photos is just incredible, especially when you shoot in Pro RAW. The ultra-wide and telephoto lenses are also great. They give you a lot of versatility whether you're taking a wide landscape shot or zooming in on a subject. And for video, well, it's an iPhone. The video quality is top-notch, but this model was actually a pretty big deal for video creators. See, the cinematic mode got a huge improvement here. You can now shoot in 4K at 30 frames per second, which is a big step up from the iPhone 13 Pro that was limited to 1080p. It just makes those shots with the blurred background look so much crisper. Plus, this was the first iPhone to get action mode, and it's pretty amazing. If you're shooting video while you're running or in a moving car, it crops in a bit but makes the footage incredibly stable, almost like you're using a gimbal. It's a really useful feature to have. So yeah, for social media, for capturing memories, for even some more serious video work, this camera system still delivers. So this phone is running the latest iOS 18.6, which is great. You get all the latest features and security updates, but there's one thing we need to talk about: Apple Intelligence. The iPhone 14 Pro with its A16 chip doesn't get the full suite of Apple's new AI features. And you know what? After thinking about it and using my phone every day, I've realized for me, that's not a deal breaker at all. Here's why. Apple Intelligence right now is still in its early stages. It's kind of like a public beta. And the truth is, I usually find myself using other AI tools that are already incredibly powerful and mature. Let me give you a real-world example. You know, when you take a great photo, but there's something distracting in the background you want to remove, Apple's new AI Magic Eraser and the Photos app is supposed to handle that. But I just used the Google Photos app. It's free, it's reliable, and I dare to say, the results I get from it are often better than what I've seen from Apple's own AI. It just works. And it's the same for other things. When I want to brainstorm ideas for a video or write a tricky email, I just open up Gemini or ChatGPT. They're built for that stuff. So while having AI built in is cool, the lack of Apple Intelligence right now doesn't feel like a huge loss, because powerful alternatives are just an app away. For me, it's definitely not a reason to overlook this phone. Okay, so with that said, no phone is perfect, right? And there are a few things to consider with the iPhone 14 Pro. The battery life, as I mentioned, is something to keep in mind, especially if you're buying a used one. And while the design is classic, some might find it a bit dated compared to the newer iPhones with the titanium frames and slightly curved edges. Also, while the performance is great, it's not the absolute fastest anymore. So if you're someone who needs the latest and greatest, you might want to look at the newer models. But for most people, I really don't think you'll notice a difference in day-to-day use. So the big question, is the iPhone 14 Pro still worth it in 2025? In my humble opinion, yes. Absolutely. It's a fantastic phone that still offers a premium experience. You get a beautiful design, a stunning display, incredible performance, and a top-tier camera system. If you're someone who is considering this iPhone, I think you'll be very happy with it. If you're currently using this iPhone and are thinking about upgrading, honestly, unless you really want the latest features like Apple Intelligence or the new design, I think you can comfortably hold onto this phone for another year or two. So that's my take on the iPhone 14 Pro in 2025. I hope this video was helpful. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, a thumbs up would be awesome. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.